That's not what it says, Maid's daughter said in clear Japanese. Exposed Billionaire's $500 million scam. My mother spent 15 years on her knees, scrubbing the floors where my father's blood had been mopped away, and the man who killed him walked over those same floors every day, his Italian leather shoes clicking against her grief like a metronome counting out our shame. Before we dive deep into this story, if you believe truth deserves to be spoken even when powerful forces try to silence it, this story was crafted for you. Subscribe now to join our community of deep listeners who understand that the most powerful stories aren't just heard but felt. Every week we'll bring you another journey that will leave you changed. Don't miss what happens next, because sometimes, the most important words are the ones that were never meant to be spoken aloud. The elevator hummed its way up 47 floors while Yuki pressed herself against the back corner, making herself small. Her mother's uniform, crisp white apron over black dress, hung in the executive bathroom, waiting for another 14-hour shift cleaning offices that cost more per square foot than their entire apartment. Yuki clutched her textbooks tighter, hoping none of the suited executives would notice the maid's daughter sneaking up to study in the empty conference rooms after hours. Scholarship student, she'd tell anyone who asked, which was technically true. What she didn't mention was that her mother had cleaned these offices for 15 years, that Yuki had grown up doing homework in supply closets, that she spoke 3 languages fluently because she'd learned them from international business calls echoing through empty halls while her mother vacuumed. The elevator dinged at the executive floor. She slipped out, head down, but froze at the sound of raised voices from the corner office, the one with the Monet reproduction and the view of the entire city. The Tokyo investors won't know the difference, a man's voice insisted. The contracts are in English. We tell them it says one thing, the reality is another. By the time they realize the tech patents are worthless, we'll have restructured everything offshore. Yuki's blood chilled. She recognized that voice, Richard Hawthorne, the billionaire whose face graced the building's lobby portrait. Her mother had cleaned his office for over a decade, always speaking of him with the reverence reserved for distant gods. Through the cracked door, she glimpsed him, silver-haired, commanding, gesturing at documents spread across his mahogany desk. But it was the younger man beside him who made her pause. Dark-haired, early 30s, with shoulders rigid with tension and eyes that kept darting toward the door as if seeking escape. "James, stop looking like you're at a funeral," Richard snapped. "This is business. The Japanese are too trusting, too polite to dig deeper. We're simply leveraging cultural differences. It's fraud, Dad." The younger man, James, pushed a hand through his hair. $500 million of fraud. It's opportunity. Richard's voice turned cold. "And you'll present these contracts in Tokyo next week just as we discussed. Your Japanese is good enough to sell it." Yuki watched James's jaw clench, watched him stare at the contracts as if they might spontaneously combust. She knew that look, the suffocation of being trapped by someone else's expectations, the weight of a path you never chose. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother, "Working late tonight. Dinner is in fridge. Study hard, my brilliant girl." Brilliant. If only her mother knew she was brilliant at hiding, at being invisible, at pretending she belonged nowhere while secretly belonging everywhere. In the conference room she'd claimed for studying, Yuki could see the Tokyo contracts through the glass partition, could read every duplicitous line in both languages. She thought of her mother's bent shoulders, the arthritis that made each floor harder to clean, the pride in her voice when she spoke of honest work. Then she looked at James Hawthorne, trapped in his father's web of lies, and made a decision that would shatter both their carefully constructed worlds. Have you ever found yourself at a crossroads where speaking up could change everything, but staying silent felt like a betrayal of who you are? Share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. 3 days later, Yuki stood in the building's marble lobby, her heart hammering against her ribs. The Tokyo delegation had arrived, 5 executives in impeccable suits, bowing with practiced precision. She'd positioned herself by the information desk, pretending to study a building directory while her ears tracked every word. James Hawthorne emerged from the executive elevator, his father's hand heavy on his shoulder. Richard's smile was predatory. James looked like a man walking to his execution. "Tanaka-san, Richard boomed, extending his hand to the lead investor. "Welcome to Hawthorne Industries. My son will be your guide today. His Japanese is excellent. Spent 2 years in Kyoto." Yuki watched the subtle shift in James's expression, the flinch at his father's lie. 6 months in Tokyo for business school was not 2 years in Kyoto. She'd heard him practicing his presentation in the empty boardroom, his Japanese competent but formal, missing the nuances that would reveal the contract's true meaning. The group moved toward the conference room, and Yuki found herself following, drawn by an inexplicable pull. Her mother was cleaning the 20th floor, safely distant. She slipped into the room adjacent to the main conference space, separated only by a glass partition that allowed sound to carry. James began his presentation, his Japanese careful and rehearsed. The investors nodded politely, too courteous to mention his occasional grammatical stumbles. Then he reached for the contracts. "These documents outline our partnership terms," he said in Japanese, then switched to English. "Mr. Tanaka, if you could sign here." "May I review the Japanese translation?" Mr. Tanaka asked. James froze. His father's smile tightened. "Of course, but I assure you, it's identical to what we've discussed." Yuki watched James slide the papers across the table, watched his hands tremble slightly. She could see the Japanese text from her position. Lies wrapped in legal language, promises that evaporated in translation. The patents described as revolutionary in English were called theoretical in Japanese. The profit guarantees vanished in subtle shifts of verb tenses. Mr. Tanaka read slowly, his brow furrowing. "This mentions potential patents pending. You said the technology was fully developed." "Translation nuance," Richard interjected smoothly. "James, clarify for our partners." James opened his mouth and Yuki saw the moment, the precipice where a man decides who he'll become. His eyes lifted, scanning the room, and through the glass partition their gazes met. She didn't know what he saw in her face. The daughter of a maid, pressed against glass like a ghost. But something shifted in his expression, recognition, perhaps, of another soul trapped by circumstance. "Actually," James said quietly, "that's not what it says." The room went still. Richard's face darkened. "James? The Japanese version is different from what we've presented." His voice grew stronger. "Significantly different." "You're mistaken," Richard said, steel in his tone. "Perhaps your Japanese isn't as strong as." "That's not what it says." The words came from Yuki's mouth before she could stop them. Clear, perfect Japanese, then repeated in English. She stood in the doorway, her legs shaking but her voice steady. Every head turned. Richard's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "Security." "I'm Yuki Tanaka," she said, using her mother's maiden name. "I'm a translator. And that contract is fraudulent." She walked into the room, past Richard's fury, past the stunned investors, straight to the table. Her fingers traced the deceptive clauses, explaining in rapid Japanese exactly how the language had been manipulated. "The patents don't exist. The technology is theoretical at best. The profit projections assume developments that haven't been made. This isn't a translation, it's a fabrication." Mr. Tanaka's face went pale, then red. The other investors began speaking rapidly among themselves. Richard lunged forward, but James stepped between them. "She's right," James said quietly. "Every word she's saying is true." Father and son stared at each other across a chasm that had always existed but never been acknowledged. In that moment, Yuki saw James choose, saw him step away from his father's shadow and into uncertain light. "You're finished," Richard snarled at his son, then turned to Yuki. "Both of you. I'll destroy you. No one will believe the word of a maid's daughter?" Yuki lifted her chin. "Maybe not. But they'll believe their own eyes reading these contracts. They'll believe your son's conscience. And they'll believe the recordings I've made of your planning sessions through very thin office walls." It was a bluff, she had no recordings. But Richard didn't know that. His face went white, then purple. The Tokyo investors were already gathering their documents, Mr. Tanaka's bow to Yuki so deep it spoke of profound gratitude. As chaos erupted, Richard shouting, lawyers being called, security arriving, James moved toward her. Up close, she could see the cost of his choice written in the lines around his eyes. "Thank you," he said simply. "I didn't do it for you." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. She'd done it for her mother, for justice, for truth, but also for the man who'd looked trapped behind glass just like her. The aftermath hit like a tsunami. Within hours, Yuki's mother was terminated. 15 years of service ended with a security escort from the building. Yuki found her sitting on their apartment's worn couch, still in her uniform, staring at her hands. "They said I stole confidential information," her mother whispered. "That I must have helped you access those documents. 15 years, Yuki. I never took so much as a paper clip." The guilt crushed Yuki's chest. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I couldn't let them." "Steal? Lie." Her mother's eyes, usually so gentle, flashed with something Yuki had never seen. "You think I cleaned their toilets for 15 years so you could throw away your future for pride?" "It wasn't pride. It was right. Right doesn't pay rent. Right doesn't buy medicine or food or—" Her mother's voice broke. "I wanted better for you. Better than this." Yuki's phone buzzed incessantly, unknown numbers, reporters, threats from Hawthorne Industries lawyers. She turned it off, but the weight of consequences pressed down. Her scholarship was tied to a Hawthorne Foundation grant. Her part-time job was at a company with Hawthorne connections. In one afternoon, she'd burned every bridge to the future she'd carefully built. Across the city, James sat in his emptied office, security watching as he packed personal items. His father hadn't spoken to him directly. All communication now came through lawyers and termination documents. 34 years of being Richard Hawthorne's son, erased in a single moment of truth. "You have 1 hour," the security guard said, not unkindly. James picked up a photo, him and his father at his Harvard graduation. Richard's hand on his shoulder, proud smile for the cameras. Had there ever been real pride or just satisfaction at a well-trained heir? His phone rang. His mother, calling from their Hamptons estate. "James, what have you done? Your father he's talking about removing you from the will, from everything. That girl, whoever she is." "She told the truth, Mom." "The truth?" His mother's laugh was bitter. "When has the truth ever mattered in this family? You had everything, position, wealth, future. And you threw it away for what? For some nobody who—" He hung up. The word, nobody, echoed in his mind. Is that what Yuki was to them? To him? He thought of her standing in that conference room, voice clear and unwavering, speaking truth to power despite having everything to lose. Nobody? She was the bravest person he'd ever met. But brave didn't erase the chaos following them both. The business newspapers ran headlines about the failed Tokyo deal. Richard's lawyers sent cease and desist letters. James's bank accounts were frozen, his father's reach extending to every asset tied to the family name. He found himself standing outside Yuki's building that evening, unsure why he'd come. Through the lobby's glass doors, he saw her helping her mother carry boxes, cleaning supplies, personal items, the detritus of sudden unemployment. Their eyes met through the glass. For a moment, neither moved. Then Yuki turned away, her message clear. "You've done enough." He wanted to explain that he'd lost everything too, that he understood the cost of truth. But watching her support her mother's trembling form, he realized his losses weren't the same. He'd fallen from heights most people never reached. She'd lost the ladder she'd been climbing her entire life. James walked away, but the image stayed. Yuki's straight spine despite the weight she carried, her mother's dignity even in defeat. He'd thought speaking truth in that conference room was the hardest thing he'd ever do. Now he understood it was only the beginning. That night, Yuki lay awake calculating the damage. Her mother's job, gone. Her scholarship, under review. Her future, uncertain. The righteousness that had fueled her in the conference room curdled into doubt. Had she helped anyone really? The Tokyo investors had avoided a bad deal, but what about her mother's swollen knuckles, years of honest work dismissed? She thought of James Hawthorne, the way he'd looked at her before she turned away. Like he wanted to say something. Like he understood. But understanding didn't pay bills or restore reputations or rebuild burned bridges. "I should have stayed quiet," she whispered to the dark. Her mother's voice drifted from the next room, speaking to her sister in Japanese. She's my daughter. Like her father, always fighting battles for others, never counting the cost to themselves. Yuki's father had died when she was 12, a construction accident the company had blamed on his negligence. Her mother had never fought it, too afraid of losing her job to push for truth. Now Yuki understood that fear, felt it crawling through her veins like ice. But underneath the fear, something else flickered. The memory of James choosing truth over family. The gratitude in Mr. Tanaka's eyes. The knowledge that $500 million wouldn't disappear into Richard Hawthorne's offshore accounts. Her phone, turned back on, showed a single message from an unknown number. The truth matters. Thank you, Jay. She deleted it, but the words lingered. Somewhere in this city, James Hawthorne was learning what it cost to choose conscience over comfort. They were both falling, but perhaps there was something to be said for falling on the right side of truth. 2 weeks later, Yuki stood in the unemployment office's fluorescent glare, her mother beside her filling out forms with careful precision. The irony wasn't lost on her. Some of the city's best lawyers wanted to hire her as a translator after the Hawthorne scandal, but Richard's influence ran deep. Mysteriously, every offer evaporated after background checks. Next. The clerk's voice cut through her thoughts. As her mother approached the window, Yuki noticed a familiar figure hunched over paperwork 3 chairs away. James Hawthorne, or what remained of him. Designer suit replaced by off-the-rack clothes, perfect haircut grown shaggy, the hollow look of someone discovering what the world offered those without golden parachutes. He glanced up, their eyes meeting. The recognition hit like electricity. He half rose, uncertain, and she found herself walking over before logic could intervene. "You're here," she said unnecessarily. "Turns out a Harvard MBA means nothing when your father owns half the city's businesses." His smile was rueful. "Can't even get a job at Starbucks." His reach is comprehensive. "I know." She gestured toward her mother. "She's been blacklisted from every cleaning service, every office building. 15 years of perfect references, meaningless." They stood awkwardly, 2 people who destroyed each other's lives with truth. Around them, the unemployment office hummed with quiet desperation. People filling forms, making calls, trying to rebuild. "Yuki Tanaka?" A voice called from the job placement desk. She turned to go, but James caught her sleeve gently. "Wait. There's something, a possibility. Can we talk? Just 5 minutes?" Her mother was still at the window, would be for a while given the paperwork. Against her better judgment, Yuki nodded. They found a corner with plastic chairs and a dying ficus. James pulled out a crumpled business card. "Kenji Nakamura. He runs a small import-export firm, specializing in Japanese-American trade. He called me yesterday." "Why would he call you?" "Because he was at that meeting. One of Mr. Tanaka's junior associates. He saw what we did, and he's looking for people who value honesty over profit." James handed her the card. "He needs translators. Real ones who understand nuance and ethics. And he needs someone to help restructure his American operations. Someone who knows the business but isn't corrupted by it." Yuki stared at the card. "You want us to work together?" "I want us to work." His voice carried exhaustion. "My father made sure we can't work anywhere else. Maybe that's not the worst thing. Your father destroyed my mother's life. My father destroyed a lot of lives. Including mine, though I know that's not the same." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I'm not asking for forgiveness or friendship. I'm saying we both need jobs and Nakamura-san is offering them. Separate departments if you prefer. But it's something." Her mother appeared, forms completed, face weary. She saw James and stiffened. "Mrs. Tanaka." James stood, bowing deeply. "I'm deeply sorry for what my father did to you. For what I enabled through years of silence." Her mother studied him with eyes that had seen too much. "You spoke the truth when it mattered. That's more than most would do." She turned to Yuki. "Who is this man offering?" Yuki explained quickly in Japanese. Her mother's expression shifted, cautious hope replacing resignation. "We'll think about it," Yuki said finally. James nodded. The interview is tomorrow at 10. Both of you if you're interested. He wants to meet the woman who raised someone brave enough to stand up to Richard Hawthorne. As he walked away, Yuki's mother touched her arm. He's not his father. That doesn't mean we should trust him. No. But perhaps we should trust the man who chose truth over family. That takes a different kind of courage. That night, Yuki researched Kenji Nakamura. Small firm, solid reputation, the kind of business that survived on relationships rather than exploitation. The pay would be modest, nothing like her lost scholarship opportunities. But it was honest work, and after weeks of closed doors, that meant everything. She thought of James in that unemployment office, how far he'd fallen from the executive elevator. They were both learning what the world looked like from the bottom up. Maybe that was exactly what they needed. The next morning, Yuki and her mother arrived at Nakamura's modest office building. James was already there, sitting stiffly in the waiting area. He tried to tame his grown-out hair. His shoes were polished despite being clearly secondhand. The effort touched something in her she didn't want to examine. "You came," he said simply. "We need work." But her tone was softer than before. Kenji Nakamura himself greeted them, a man in his 60s with kind eyes and calloused hands. "I built this business on trust," he said in accented English, then switched to Japanese. "What you both did took courage. I value courage. But more, I value people who choose right over easy." The interview was unlike any Yuki had experienced. Nakamura asked about their values, their dreams, their understanding of honor. He spoke of building bridges between cultures, of business as relationship rather than transaction. "I can offer you both positions," he said finally. Yuki-san as senior translator and cultural liaison. James-san as operations analyst. "You'll work together sometimes. Our business is too small for complete separation. Can you handle that?" Yuki looked at James, saw her own desperate hope reflected in his eyes. They destroyed each other's worlds with truth. Maybe they could rebuild something better from the ruins. "Yes," they said in unison. Nakamura smiled. "Good. Truth is like an earthquake. It destroys, but it also clears ground for stronger foundations. Let's build something that won't fall when shaken." Have you ever found unexpected allies in the very people you thought were your opposites? 3 months into their new positions, Yuki found herself working late on a complex contract translation. The office was quiet except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of James typing in the next room. They developed a careful choreography of coexistence, professional, cordial, but never personal. "Coffee?" James appeared in her doorway holding 2 cups. She accepted gratefully, her eyes burning from hours of screen time. "Thanks." The Yamamoto contract. Still wrestling with the liability clauses. He hesitated. "Actually, could you look at something? I think I'm missing cultural context." They bent over his screen, and Yuki explained the subtleties, how Japanese business relationships valued long-term trust over short-term protection. As she spoke, she noticed a photo tucked behind his monitor. A young boy with James's eyes standing beside a woman who was definitely not his mother. "My brother," James said quietly, following her gaze. "Half-brother. Tommy. I didn't know you had a brother. Neither does the business world. Or the society pages." His fingers traced the photo's edge. "My father's first indiscretion. Tommy's mother was his secretary, classic cliché. When she got pregnant, he paid her to disappear. Set them up in Queens, far from the Upper East Side." Yuki sank into the adjacent chair. "You knew about him?" "Found out when I was 16. Hired a private investigator to look into my father's finances for a school economics project. Found the payments instead." His laugh was bitter. "Tommy has autism. Brilliant with numbers, struggles with social situations. My father saw him as a mistake to be hidden. I saw him as the brother I'd always wanted." "Did you ever meet him?" "Every week for 10 years. Told my parents I was at lacrosse practice." James pulled out his phone, scrolled to more photos. Tommy at various ages, always with that same gentle smile. "I paid for his therapy, his special school, using money from my trust fund. When father found out last year." "That's why you were already pulling away from the company?" Yuki realized. Before the Tokyo deal. He threatened to cut off all support to Tommy if I didn't fall in line. Said I was enabling weakness. James's jaw clenched. I caved. Chose the easy path, keeping my position to keep the money flowing to Tommy. Until you stood in that conference room and showed me what real courage looked like. The office felt smaller suddenly, intimate with shared truth. Yuki found herself speaking before she could stop. My father died fighting for truth too. James turned, giving her his full attention. He was a construction foreman. Good at his job, careful about safety. But the company was cutting corners, substandard materials, rushed timelines. He documented everything, was going to report them. She stared at her coffee, seeing another time. The beam that killed him shouldn't have been load-bearing. It was because proper supports cost more. Yuki. They blamed him. Said he ignored safety protocols. My mother was pregnant with my sister, had me to worry about. She couldn't fight them, couldn't risk losing her job. Her voice cracked. I was 12. Old enough to know they were lying, too young to do anything about it. Is that why you couldn't stay silent about the contracts? I watched my mother accept their lies, bow to their lawyers, clean their offices. Every day for 15 years, she cleaned the offices of men who killed my father and called it his fault. Yuki met his eyes. When I heard your father planning his lie, I was 12 again. But this time I could do something. They sat in silence, the weight of shared loss filling the space between them. Finally James spoke. What happened to your sister? May died at 3 months. Complications from premature birth. My mother went into labor early after the accident. Yuki's smile was sad. She would have been 22 now. I like to think she would have been brave. Like her sister. I'm not brave. I'm angry. There's a difference. Maybe. But you channel your anger into justice. I channeled mine into compliance until you showed me another way. He paused. I've been sending money to Tommy directly now. Not much, unemployment doesn't pay like trust funds. But Nakamura-san gave me an advance, and Tommy's mother is resourceful. Will you introduce me to him sometime? The question surprised them both. James's face softened. He'd like you. He has a thing about languages, speaks 4 learning Mandarin now. Says they're puzzles with human hearts. Smart kid. Smarter than his brother. James stood, gathering the contracts. Thank you. For the help with these and for listening. As he turned to go, Yuki found herself saying, my father kept journals. In Japanese, so my mother saved them. Sometimes I translate them just to hear his voice again. James paused at the door. What do they say? That truth is a seed that grows slowly but roots deeply. That courage isn't the absence of fear but action despite it. She smiled slightly. That love is seeing someone clearly and choosing to stand beside them anyway. Your father sounds like someone I would have wanted to meet. He would have liked you, I think. The you who chose truth over comfort. They looked at each other across the small office, 2 children of different worlds who'd lost fathers in different ways. One to death, one to principle. But in their losses they'd found something unexpected, understanding. Good night, Yuki. Good night, James. But neither moved for a long moment, held by the recognition of shared pain transformed into shared purpose. In the quiet office, with the city lights painting shadows on the walls, they weren't the maid's daughter and the billionaire's son. They were just 2 people learning that sometimes the deepest connections grow from the deepest wounds. The autumn rain drummed against the office windows as Yuki rushed in, soaked despite her umbrella. She'd been at the courthouse all morning, translating for a pro bono case Nakamura had taken. A Japanese family facing eviction. You look like you swam here, James said, appearing with a towel. Umbrella inverted on Broadway. I think it's in New Jersey by now. She accepted the towel gratefully, then noticed his expression. What's wrong? He held up his phone. My mother. She's been calling all morning. Father had a heart attack. Yuki's hand stilled in her hair. Is he? Stable. But she wants me there. Says it's time to stop this foolishness and come home. His laugh was hollow. Home. As if I could just walk back into that life. Are you going? I don't know. He's still my father despite everything. But showing up means facing all of them, the board members, the society friends, everyone who thinks I betrayed the family. He slumped in his chair. I'm not sure I'm strong enough for that. Without thinking, Yuki reached for his hand. You stood up to him when it mattered most. That's the hardest thing you'll ever have to do. This is just an epilogue. His fingers intertwined with hers and neither pulled away. Would you come with me? The question hung between them. Going to the hospital meant entering his world, facing the people who destroyed her mother's livelihood. But looking at his face, vulnerable, afraid, asking for help he'd never learned how to need, she knew her answer. Let me get my coat. The hospital's private wing reeked of privilege and antiseptic. Yuki felt every eye on her as they walked through the halls, the wrong clothes, wrong background, wrong everything. James's mother stood outside the room, her perfect composure cracking when she saw her son. James, thank God. He's been asking. She stopped, noticing Yuki. Who is this? This is Yuki Tanaka, my colleague and friend. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. The girl who told the truth, James said firmly. If you can't be civil to her, I'll leave right now. His mother's mouth tightened, but she nodded. Your father is awake. He wants to speak with you. Alone. James glanced at Yuki, who squeezed his hand. I'll be right here. She watched him enter the room, shoulders squared for battle. His mother stood rigid beside her, silence thick with unspoken accusations. Finally, the older woman spoke. He gave up everything for you. He gave up everything for his conscience, Yuki corrected gently. I just happened to be there when he found it. You don't understand what you've cost him. The connections, the future, the chains? Yuki met her gaze steadily. Mrs. Hawthorne, your son is free. Maybe for the first time in his life. That's not a loss, it's a gift. Before his mother could respond, raised voices came from the room. The door flew open and James stormed out, face flushed. We're leaving, he said tightly. James, his mother started. He offered me everything back. My position, my trust fund, my name. All I have to do is publicly say you manipulated me, that the contracts were legitimate, that father was the victim of a vindictive employee's daughter. His voice shook with rage. He's lying there with a failing heart and he's still trying to buy truth. They left without another word. In the elevator, James's control finally cracked. His shoulders shook, with anger, grief, or both. Yuki stepped closer, offering silent support. I wanted him to be different, he whispered. Just once, I wanted him to choose love over leverage. They emerged into the rain, neither having thought to bring an umbrella. Within seconds they were soaked, but James just stood there, face tilted to the sky. You know what the stupid thing is? He laughed brokenly. I still love him. This man who would destroy anyone for profit, who sees his own son as a chess piece. I still love him. That's not stupid, Yuki said softly. That's human. We can love people and hate what they do. The two aren't mutually exclusive. He looked at her then, rain streaming down both their faces. How are you so wise? I had a good teacher. My father used to say that love isn't endorsement. It's just love. Complicated and messy and sometimes painful, but still sacred. Your father sounds like he understood things my family never will. Maybe. Or maybe he just understood that family is what we make it, not just what we're born into. They stood there in the rain, two people who'd lost different things but found something unexpected in the ruins. A taxi splashed by, honking, and the spell broke. We should get inside before we catch pneumonia, James said, but he was smiling now, a real smile, not the practiced one from his old life. Nakamura-san will think we're crazy, coming back looking like drowned rats. Good. Sanity is overrated. He paused. Thank you. For coming with me. For seeing me as more than my father's son. Thank you for seeing me as more than the maid's daughter. They walked back toward the office, no longer touching but somehow closer than before. The rain continued to fall, washing the city clean, and Yuki thought about seeds growing slowly, roots reaching deep. Her father had been right about truth. He'd been right about courage too. But mostly he'd been right about love. Winter arrived with a vengeance, and with it came the lawsuit. Yuki found the summons taped to her apartment door on a Tuesday evening. Richard Hawthorne was suing her for corporate espionage, defamation, and theft of trade secrets. The number at the bottom made her knees weak. $50 million. Her mother found her sitting on the kitchen floor, papers scattered around her like fallen leaves. "We'll fight it," her mother said firmly, though her hands trembled as she read. "We'll find a lawyer." "With what money?" Yuki's voice was hollow. "He knows we can't afford to fight. This is about forcing us into submission." Her phone rang. James, probably calling about the matching lawsuit that had surely been delivered to him. But when she answered, his voice was strange, formal, distant. "Yuki, I need to see you. Can you meet me at the office? Nakamura-san wants us both there." The office was too quiet when she arrived. James stood by the window, his back to her, while Nakamura sat behind his desk looking older than she'd ever seen him. "Sit, please," Nakamura said gently. "If this is about the lawsuit," Yuki began. "It's about more than that." Nakamura slid a document across the desk. "Richard Hawthorne made me an offer today. He'll drop all lawsuits, restore your mother's pension, even provide a glowing recommendation, if I fire you both immediately and sign a non-disclosure agreement about why." The words hit like physical blows. "You're firing us?" "I'm a small business owner, Yuki-san. I cannot survive a legal battle with Hawthorne Industries." His voice carried genuine pain. "If I don't accept his offer, he'll destroy my company. 20 employees will lose their jobs. Families I've supported for decades will suffer. So you choose them over us." The betrayal burned her throat. "I choose 20 families over 2 people. It's arithmetic I hate but cannot ignore." Nakamura's eyes were wet. "You have 1 hour to clear your desks." "I'm sorry." "More sorry than you can know." He left them alone. The silence stretched until Yuki thought it might snap. "You knew," she said finally, not looking at James. "That's why you sounded strange on the phone. You already knew." "He called me first. Wanted to give me a chance to accept a counteroffer." James still faced the window. "Return to the company, publicly support my father, marry someone appropriate, and he'd leave you alone. And I told him to go to hell." He turned finally and she saw the devastation in his eyes. "So he's destroying us both instead. You should have taken it." The words tasted like ash. "Your family, your life." "My life." His laugh was bitter. "What life? Going back to being his puppet? Marrying someone I don't love to produce appropriate heirs? Watching him destroy people while I stay silent?" He stepped closer. "I'd rather lose everything again than lose." He stopped, but she heard the unfinished word. "Don't," she whispered. "We're colleagues who are about to be unemployed. Don't make this more complicated than it is." "Complicated?" His control finally snapped. "Yuki, we've been dancing around this for months. I see how you look at me when you think I'm not watching. I know you feel. What I feel doesn't matter." Her voice cracked. "Your father is destroying my life, my mother's life, because I dared to tell the truth. And you're part of that world whether you want to be or not. Every time I look at you, I see him. I see what your name means, what it costs." The words hung between them like a blade. James stepped back as if slapped. "So that's it." His voice was quiet now, defeated. "Everything we've built, everything we've shared, none of it matters because of my last name? Your last name has the power to ruin lives. It's ruining mine right now." Tears burned her eyes. "I was stupid to think we could be, to think this could work." "This? What is this, Yuki? Say it." But she couldn't. To name what had grown between them would make its loss unbearable. Instead, she turned to her desk, began packing her few personal items. A photo of her parents. Her father's journal. The business card Nakamura had given her that first day, full of hope. "I'll fight the lawsuit," James said behind her. "I'll testify about my father's fraud." "Oh, you'll lose? We both know that. He has better lawyers, deeper pockets, judges who owe him favors." She closed her box, lifted it. "Sometimes the dragon wins, James. That's the real world. The real world." He blocked her path. The real world is where you taught me to choose truth over comfort. Where we rebuilt our lives from nothing. His voice broke. Where I fell in love with the bravest woman I've ever met. The words she both longed for and dreaded. She forced herself to meet his eyes, to say the words that would save him from her sinking ship. I don't love you. The lie tasted like poison. I'm grateful for your help for the job, but that's all. We're too different. We always were. She watched him absorb the blow, watched his face close off, the practiced mask from his old life sliding back into place. He stepped aside. I see. His voice was formal now, distant. I apologize for misreading the situation. Yuki fled, her box clutched to her chest, tears blinding her. Behind her, she left the man who'd chosen truth for her, who'd lost everything rather than betray what they'd built. But love wasn't enough when the world was designed to keep them apart. Her father had been wrong. Sometimes love meant walking away before you destroyed each other completely. In the elevator, her phone buzzed. A text from her mother, "Come home, my brave girl. We'll face tomorrow together." But Yuki knew there would be no tomorrow. Not with James. Not with the life she'd started to build. There was only survival now, and the price of truth that never stopped demanding payment. Have you ever had to push away something precious to protect it from being destroyed? 2 weeks passed in a blur of lawyers, sleepless nights, and rejection letters. Yuki's mother had taken a night shift at a 24-hour diner, the only place that would hire her without checking references. Yuki herself had applied to 53 jobs, each application meeting the same fate once her name was searched. She sat in their dark apartment, laptop glowing with another rejection email, when her phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Tanaka? This is Margaret Chen from Chen & Associates. I'm calling about your case against Hawthorne Industries. I don't have a case. I can't afford. Your retainer has been paid in full. We'll be representing you pro bono beyond that. Can you come to our offices tomorrow at 9? Yuki's mind raced. Who paid the retainer? I'm not at liberty to say. 9 o'clock, Miss Tanaka. We have work to do. The line went dead. Yuki stared at her phone, hope and suspicion warring in her chest. It had to be James. Who else would care enough to help? But she'd been cruel enough in her rejection. Surely he wouldn't. Across the city, James sat in a coffee shop, watching through the window as his brother Tommy worked on math problems. He'd moved Tommy and his mother to a new apartment, smaller but safer, farther from his father's reach. The settlement from selling his watch collection had covered 6 months' rent and Tommy's therapy. You look sad, Tommy said without looking up from his equations. I'm fine, buddy. No. Your breathing pattern is wrong for fine. It's the same as when Dad yells at you. Tommy finally looked up, his direct gaze seeing too much. Is it about the Japanese girl? The one who tells the truth? James's chest tightened. He'd mentioned Yuki once, weeks ago, but Tommy remembered everything. It's complicated. Love isn't complicated. People make it complicated. Tommy returned to his math. She made you brave. That's love. She doesn't feel the same way. Did you ask her why she lied? James froze. What makes you think she lied? Statistical probability. When someone says they don't love you right after you save them, they're usually lying to protect you. Tommy wrote another equation. You should ask her why. That night, James stood outside Yuki's building in the snow. He'd been there an hour, gathering courage, when he saw her mother exit for her shift. She noticed him, stopped. James-san. Her bow was slight but respectful. You're the one who hired the lawyers. He didn't deny it. She can't fight him alone. No. But she won't accept help easily. Too much pride, like her father. She studied him with knowing eyes. She cried for 3 days after the office. Not for the job. For what she had to say to you. She said she doesn't. My daughter is fluent in 3 languages but terrible at speaking her heart. Her smile was sad. She pushes away what she treasures most, thinking sacrifice is love. Her father did the same. She left him standing in the snow with truth settling around him like winter. Yuki had lied. The knowledge should have brought relief, but instead it brought urgency. She was drowning, and her pride would let her sink rather than take his hand. He climbed the stairs to her apartment, knocked before he could lose his nerve. "Mom, did you forget?" Yuki opened the door and froze. "James? You lied." He said it simply, without accusation. Her face cycled through emotions: surprise, pain, resignation. "It doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters." He stepped forward and she didn't retreat. "You think pushing me away protects me? From what? I've already lost everything. The only thing left to lose is you. Your father is dying." The words came out flat. "Another heart attack yesterday. He's got weeks, maybe days. His empire is already fracturing. The board smells blood, the investigations are multiplying. He destroyed us for nothing." "James?" Her hand reached out instinctively, then dropped. "I'm not here about him. I'm here because Tommy asked me a question I couldn't answer." He met her eyes. "Why did you lie?" The last of her walls crumbled. "Because loving you costs too much. Because every time something beautiful enters my life, your world crushes it. Because I'd rather lose you by choice than watch your father tear us apart piece by piece. My father is one man. A powerful man, yes, but still just one man." James stepped closer. "We are two people who found each other against impossible odds. Who chose truth when lies were easier. Who rebuilt from ashes." His voice dropped. "Who fell in love in the ruins of our old lives. Love isn't enough. Love is the only thing that's enough." He cradled her face gently. "Everything else, money, power, reputation, my father has all of that and he's dying alone. But love? Love made me brave enough to stand in that conference room. Love made you speak when silence was safer. Love is the only truth that matters." She was crying now, weeks of suppressed emotion breaking free. "I'm scared. I'm so scared of hoping again." "Then be scared. But be scared with me." He pulled her close. "We'll face the lawsuits together. Find new jobs together. Build something real together. Just choose us. Choose the truth of what we feel over the fear of what we might lose." In the hallway's dim light, with snow falling past the window, Yuki made her choice. She kissed him, soft at first, then with all the desperate hope she'd been denying. When they broke apart, both were crying and smiling. "I love you," she whispered. "That's my truth. I love you too. Whatever comes next, that won't change." They stood there holding each other, two people who'd lost everything except what mattered most. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and battles and uncertainty. But tonight, they had chosen love over fear, truth over safety, each other over everything else. 6 months later, Yuki stood in the same conference room where everything had begun, but this time she wasn't hiding. The mahogany table was covered with documents. Not fraudulent contracts but evidence for the FBI's case against Hawthorne Industries. She translated steadily, her voice clear and confident. "The Tokyo investors have agreed to testify," she told the lead investigator. "Mr. Tanaka is flying in next week." James sat beside her, reviewing financial records that painted a damning picture of decades of fraud. His father had died 2 months ago, taking his secrets to the grave but leaving enough evidence to unravel an empire built on lies. "That's the last of it," James said, closing the final folder. "Every shell company, every hidden account, every victim." The investigator nodded. "With your testimony and Miss Tanaka's documentation, we have enough to freeze all assets and pursue criminal charges against the board members who participated." He paused. "The whistleblower reward will be substantial. Enough to cover your legal fees and then some." After the investigators left, Yuki and James stood at the window overlooking the city. The Hawthorne Industries sign was being removed from the building, letter by letter, the legacy disappearing. "How do you feel?" Yuki asked softly. "Free." James turned to her. "For the first time in my life, completely free." A knock interrupted them. Kenji Nakamura entered, looking sheepish but determined. "I heard the investigation was complete. I wanted to apologize. And to make an offer." "Nakamura-san," Yuki began, but he raised his hand. "I was a coward. I chose the easy path when you needed support. But your courage in continuing to fight inspired others. 3 of my biggest competitors have agreed to a joint venture. one that needs leadership unafraid of difficult truths. He bowed deeply. Would you consider running it? Both of you? James and Yuki exchanged glances. They'd already made their plans. A small translation and consulting firm, building bridges between cultures with integrity. But this, we appreciate the offer, James said carefully. But we've learned the value of building something ourselves. Something no one can take away. Nakamura smiled. I thought you might say that. Then let me make a different offer. Our joint venture needs a translation and consulting firm we can trust. Would you consider us your first major client? This time Yuki smiled. We'd be honored. That evening they hosted a celebration in their small office. Really just a converted apartment, but it was theirs. Yuki's mother had prepared a feast, her hands steady again now that she worked for herself, cleaning for clients who valued her personally. Tommy was there, explaining cryptocurrency to anyone who would listen. Even Mrs. Hawthorne had come, looking fragile but genuine in her attempt to build a relationship with the son who'd chosen principle over privilege. A toast, Mr. Tanaka raised his glass. He'd flown in early, eager to celebrate with the woman who'd saved his company millions. To truth-tellers and bridge builders. To those who choose difficult right over easy wrong. To second chances, Yuki's mother added, smiling at Mrs. Hawthorne who was helping serve food with unpracticed but willing hands. To love that sees clearly and chooses anyway, James said looking at Yuki. She raised her own glass, thinking of her father's words about seeds growing slowly but rooting deeply. To families we choose and futures we build. They drank, and the small office filled with laughter and languages mixing. Japanese and English, the universal tongue of people finding common ground. Later, as the party wound down, Yuki found herself on the fire escape with James, city lights sparkling below. He pulled out a small box, nervous for the first time in months. I know we said we'd wait, build the business first, but... Yes. She didn't let him finish. Whatever you're asking, yes. He laughed, opening the box anyway. The ring was simple, a small sapphire surrounded by smaller stones. It was my grandmother's. The only family heirloom my father didn't control. She was a teacher who married a factory worker. Everyone said they were too different, but they had 57 years together. It's perfect. Yuki let him slide it onto her finger, watched it catch the light. We're really doing this? Building a life together? We already are. He pulled her close. Every day we choose each other, we build it stronger. Through the window she could see their makeshift family. Her mother teaching Tommy origami, Mrs. Hawthorne actually laughing at something Mr. Tanaka said, former enemies becoming friends over shared food and shared truth. That's not what it says, Yuki murmured, remembering the words that had started everything. What? The fairy tale. Where the prince saves the princess and they live happily ever after. She turned in his arms. That's not what our story says. What does it say? That two people saved each other. That truth costs everything except what matters most. That love grows strongest in broken places. She smiled. That sometimes the maid's daughter and the billionaire's son both win by losing.